The personal finance journey can be long and challenging and unknown, especially for parents who are trying to juggle their kids, who are trying to juggle their career and, get some sleep in between all that stuff, and also not step on a Lego every freaking night. This was me just a second ago. My foot is throbbing, by the way. But on this episode of the Wealthy Parent Pod, I'm going to be going through real questions from real parents on their personal finance journey, and I'm going to be using my experience as a 15 plus year finance professional, paying off our own $43,000 of debt in just 13 months and using that momentum to build up a net worth to over $850,000 using simple systems that I teach inside of my Wealthy Parent program. But let's dive into the first question. Question from Joanna. My husband and I have 2 kids and make around $140,000 a year combined. We have $8,000 saved, but I can't tell if that's enough. How much should we actually have in an emergency fund? Great question, Joanna. It's very common. The one thing that I'll kind of push back on is the word should. I don't know if we should have any specific amount. And if I tell you something, an amount, I don't know if that's going to necessarily work for you because every situation is different. Personally, for us, when my wife and I were paying off $43,000 worth of debt, and we did that in 13 months, we were able to do that because we at the time had an emergency fund of $1,500 where we felt like that was enough to cover most things that would come up, and we were able to just focus our attention on putting every extra dollar towards our debt, and that's how we were able to pay it off so quickly. Now, this was 7 years ago, so maybe $1,500 doesn't feel like a lot today. So maybe for you, what you have to ask yourself is this, and this is the framework that I would share. And if you were, working in the Wealthy Parent Program, for example, if you were to look back, say a year, and I know that can be a long time, but with AI, it could be an easy way just to find transactions and things like that. If you were to look back a year and say, what were the unexpected expenses that occurred in that year and how much were they? And then sort of backtrack and say like, okay, how much do I need then to cover the majority of these emergency things that pop up? Because at the end of the day, it's not the answer for today could be different than the answer for a year from now. And what I mean by that is like we started with $1,500. Today, our emergency buffer is way more advanced and bigger because we've just been doing it longer. And as we continue to do this, like we just don't want a thing to interrupt what we have going on in our day-to-day finances. So like $1,500 now is definitely not going to be enough. And, we have a higher paying mortgage now. We do have like 2 kids who are growing up and things are happening all the time, right? I have a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old. And so $1,500 just doesn't feel like enough. But now we have a buffer in our checking account. So we have a 3 mortgage payment buffer in our checking. That's like the new zero. We can't go below 3 mortgage payments. That's what we have. We have a savings account, a very inefficient savings account. There's some money in there, whatever. And then we have a bunch in a high yield savings account that's just growing. Something like 3-4% right now is the current interest rate on that, whatever. And I just like to think about it like if I was robbing a bank, right? And I was the greatest bank heister in the world. In the movies, right? They have, the best banks in the world have all these different like security levels. The first is like this top-notch security vault thing that everyone seems to crack, right? And then the next room has lasers in it. And then the next room, there's a crocodile moat thing that you have to get through, and then you have to swing over these you get the point, right? That's how I want people to think about their finances. So it's like layers of an onion. So if you're just kind of starting to kind of come full circle with this, you saved $8,000 here. Great job, by the way. What would you feel like is comfortable enough for you to kind of move forward and push towards other financial goals? And then as you grow that out, it's like maybe it's half that, maybe it's $4,000, maybe it's all of it, maybe it's $8,000, and then you just sit on that. That's your emergency fund. You do have the 2 kids, and then in your $140,000 combined, we have to ask ourselves, how do we find additional cash flow so that we can put more to our financial goals? Now, I don't know how old you guys are, so if the only amount of money you have in like a savings or retirement is the $8,000, then we definitely need to do this 3-step process that I walk everyone through to help find more cash flow. So first, we're going to do a 90-day look back and see where have we been spending our money. This will open your eyes very clearly to see like what's been happening. And then I want you to write down a list of your North Star goals. So these are life goals, financial goals, non-negotiable spending for you, and just write them down and then reorder them. Okay. And then step 3 is, okay, here's where we've been spending our money, and then comparing it to, okay, basically where do I want our money to start going? And then we realign it, and it's using the same money that you already have. Because if you're making $140,000, that is plenty of money to be able to find extra so you can put more towards your savings or your retirement or your kids' future education, whatever kind of is on your North Star goal list in terms of financial goals. So at the end of the day, the emergency fund will not make us rich. Absolutely not. But it is the thing that will allow us to be aggressive in other areas. Guys, real quick, I've opened up some spots in my Wealthy Parent program for busy families looking to get more clarity in their finances, find extra money each month without making more, so that they're able to put more of their hardworking money towards their financial goals and just feel like they're winning with their money. If that sounds interesting, any of that, there's a link below this video to book a call directly with me, and we could start your path to becoming a wealthy parent. I'll see you there. Next question from Steven. I'm 34, married with 2 kids, and we finally have $20K sitting in savings. I don't want to waste the opportunity, but I'm also nervous about investing it. What would you do with the $20K? Okay, so we have a lot of savings questions today. Great job getting to $20,000. The first thing I'll say is, why are you nervous about investing it? Because when I hear that question, it's more of like a behavioral, psychological question, and I'm definitely not an expert in that area, just to be very clear, because I like to answer things like tactically, but I think uncovering that first is going to be helpful for you. So why are you nervous in investing? Here are some of the top reasons that people think investing is maybe not for them, or they don't want to, or they haven't started. One, they believe it's risky. And I can understand that, because it feels like you are in less control. You're putting money somewhere else, and people are just telling you it's going to grow over a long period of time. And so I think, quite honestly, maybe there just needs to be a little more education or just awareness around kind of what investing is. Now, there's different ways to invest. There's, and maybe that's actually number 2, right? The second kind of thing that people as why people don't get started, because there's so much information out there. There's so many things to invest in. It's like, I don't want to invest in the wrong thing. You could invest in crypto, or you could do day trading or penny stocks. That's like kind of on one end of the spectrum. And then the other end of the spectrum, and how I grew to over $850,000 of net worth, where most of our money is either in cash or retirement or our kids' future education, is by just doing a simple investing strategy. I'm investing in broad market index funds, where over a long enough time horizon, these index funds just go up. So I'll give you a stat that is crazy, and people will probably push back on, and they'll call it BS, but it is what it is. If you were to look at the stock market today, as I'm recording this video, we are at an all-time high in the stock market. So the stock market, that means, has a 100% recovery rate. Think about that. Whenever it's gone down, it's always gone past it eventually later on. 100% recovery rate. There aren't too many things in this world that have that sort of success rate. Now, past performance absolutely does not indicate future results. Absolutely not. And is investing in anything a risk? Absolutely. Everything could go to zero tomorrow. I don't watch the news anymore, but I can hear conversations with people in my life who do watch the news, and there's a lot of doom and gloom out there. And it could be really easy to get wrapped up into that, like, oh my gosh, what's going on? If you think about the pandemic, for example, that was kind of the most recent, big negative event that occurred. The stock market literally tanked, right? Everyone was panicking. Everyone was selling. They didn't know what was going on. They thought the world was ending. But about a year later, it got back up to where the point before it fell, right? And now, again, it's just shot up over time. Let me show you a visual on this, actually, to help lock this in here. So this is just a chart of the S&P 500, which is kind of like the gold standard of investing in the United States. It just takes the top 500 public companies, and you just kind of invest in the top 500. And obviously, we all know the big guys up top, right? Like the Apples, the Nvidias, the Googles, etc. But the bottom dozens or so, they always switch out. So it's always just competitive, the cream rises to the top, right? So we're always just investing in the greatest, most valuable companies. And so if we look at this chart here, This is just the value of the S&P 500. And if we started investing on November 22nd, 1996, and we'd have a 900% return over those like 30 years. 900%. Now, if you started investing here and it went down to here, that would feel pretty horrible, right? If you started investing here in the beginning of 2020, that would feel pretty horrible. And by the way, there were people that I know that did that and they haven't gotten back in since because they're concerned, but they're not looking at like this. Because like, yeah, it went down horrifically, right? But then give it a year plus later and boom, it's back up to, and then some. It like doubled. It doubled. And then we had a trough again, and then it doubled. So like every time it goes down, it just recovers. And right now we're at an all-time high. So hopefully this gives you just some perspective. And I don't even think that this was your main question. That's just something that I noticed and I had to talk about first. So I don't want to waste the opportunity. What would you do with the $20,000? So first, yes, let me walk you through just generally what I, if I'm making a YouTube video, I'm sharing this waterfall method with you. Now, this might not exactly fit your specific situation. And so this is definitely not financial advice, but it's just like a general broad thing that works. So what I want you to think about in this waterfall method is like pools of money. So you make your money and it comes into your bank account, your household income, right? The first thing everyone should be doing is having an emergency reserve. A lot of people say 3 to 6 months worth of expenses. For me, when I started, like I mentioned in the last question to Joanna, it was just $1,500 for us to start, and we've built that up over time. But the emergency fund is critical because again, it doesn't help us get rich, but it helps us stop going backwards, right? So if we have a big buffer, we can be more aggressive with other financial goals. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because you do have the $20,000. You didn't mention anything else about where you are with your financial goals, anything like that. So the next thing, if you have high interest debt, that's the next thing that I would personally want to pay off. Because if we do the interest rate math on that, I like to use 7-8% is kind of the cutoff. If you have debt with a higher interest rate than that, I would personally want to pay that off first. Obviously, if you have we'll call it a 28% credit card interest, like that is, that's high, right? And if we look at a return on the stock market, for example, we'll say conservatively 8% return per year after like inflation and all this other stuff. Typically, like if you look at the S&P 500, it's up 10 to 12% over a long enough time horizon. But that's why I like to be conservative and just say 8%, whatever. So if you look at the interest rate math on that and you have a 28% credit card and 8% return on investing, you're losing 20% of interest. And what people forget is everyone loves the idea of compounding, like having our money work for us. But when it's working against us, it's just as powerful, right? So getting rid of the 28% credit card is a guaranteed 28% return on your money. People don't talk about this, but it's true. And so that's what I would do first. And yes, I do mean like literally prioritizing everything towards this high interest debt, including like 401ks and everything like that. Just like pause everything. We need as much cash flow to the high interest debt first. Okay. And then after that's done, what I want people to do, if you have a 401k match option at your employer, if you're employed, W-2 employee, I would do the 401k match. So typically these are anywhere from like 1% match to 6% or something like that. Definitely take the match. Most people are maybe in that 3% range or something like that. So basically what that means is you contribute 3% of your paycheck towards the 401k, and then your employer matches the 3%. And then obviously you want to check the parameters around that. Like, does their 3% actually happen at the time of the pay? Is it you have to wait, you have to be like vested is what it's called by the end of the year? Do you have to wait a certain amount of time, 3 years sometimes, to be able to recoup all that money? So you just got to look at the fine print on that. But at the end of the day, this is essentially free money, and it kind of just is 100% investment on your money because it's double, right? 3%, they're giving 3%, right? Great. The next thing I would do after that is Roth IRA, trying to max out your Roth IRA. And this is great because it gives you a little more flexibility, and there's better tax benefits for sure. This is capped at right now $7,500 in 2026. So it's kind of a small thing that you need to just kind of invest in. I believe if you were like a bi-weekly paycheck here, let me just triple check this number, but I think it's just like $200 something. If I do it by 26 pay periods, yeah, it's $288 a pay period that you just invest into that. So that's not that big of a deal. It's not that hard to max out your Roth IRA. After that, you mentioned you have kids, so I would be then putting money into a 529 education savings account. Now, the question here that I get a lot is how much should I be doing? And there's definitely calculators out there, like college calculators that you can plug in. I think Vanguard has one, for example, where you can even put like, hey, I want to put them, what would happen if they're in a public school or a private school, and you say kind of where you live and like what all your plans are, and you can kind of reverse engineer how much you need to be putting towards that every single month. This is more of a personal decision, to be quite honest with you. There's no right answer. But for us, like we currently have over $30,000 in our kids' future education accounts, and they're only 5 and 2. So like those numbers are going to be massive, and it's going to help us out a lot. We don't want to just hand them a golden ticket, right? We do want them to be responsible with like having some idea. We want them to have skin in the game, I guess, if they go towards like higher education, college, and we could talk about the whole thing about, is college even going to not exist, but is it, is college going to be free in 15 years? Nobody knows, but I'd rather just be prepared now and just figure it out later. And then after that, the 401k max. So depending on the age, right now I think it's $24,500 for people under 50 to be able to max that out. And this one is a little harder to reach because it's a higher, contribution. So that's why this order makes so much more sense, because in my opinion, the Roth IRA is a better option, but we still want the 401k match. So we want to put that first, IRA. And then this is the idea of like putting on your oxygen mask first, like planning for your stuff first, and then the kids. I know for parents it's uncomfortable to not put their kids first, but like we have to figure out our own stuff first so that we can have the ability to put money towards our own kids, right? 401k max is like $24,000 in a year. And then the account that most people forget about, to be quite honest with you, and this is something that my wife and I need to kind of get back into, the HSA. Really underrated account. Most people just use it as like a way to pay for like co-pays or, your Walgreens prescription, something like that, right? But really this is a triple tax benefit. So you're not taxed when you contribute it. You could put it into an investing vehicle inside the HSA, and that's not taxed. And then as long as it's for qualifying medical and health expenses, it comes out tax-free. So like in theory, there's no tax on this at all. So I like this one a lot. And then if there is any overflow, that's when you just pump it into a generic brokerage account where there's just the most flexibility. You can put it in whatever you want, however you want to do it, but there are no like tax benefits to this. It's just like you're paying capital gains tax when you take it out, blah, 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 blah. But there's kind of less restrictions and there's no limits or anything like that. So it's a good way to overflow. And currently what my wife and I are doing is when we have extra money kind of each month or whatever, it just goes into this brokerage account that we've just been building up to, and we actually don't know what the opportunity is that we want to put money towards it. It's kind of like a shorter term thing potentially, but we're also not sure. But we've been rewarded in the past for not having a plan, but still just doing the financial, like putting money to something and having it grow. And then that's how we were able to land in this dream home that we have today, because we just created the opportunity for ourselves to be able to put ourselves in a position that when the opportunity came up, like when the housing market went nuts, our previous home grew 50% in value. It wasn't that nice of a house, but it grew 50% in value. So we took the opportunity, we used none of our own cash, and we just sold the house and plopped a deposit onto this house. Yes, our mortgage is a little higher, but it's still something that we can comfortably handle. So this is the waterfall method. And I would love to go into more detail on any one of these items specifically. So let me know down in the comments, guys, if you want to see something more specific on this. But this is just a general broad scope. And I hope that this helps you. And guys, if you want your questions answered, if you got a hard-hitting question about paying off debt, investing, saving money, anything with personal finances, make sure to drop it beneath this video here, and I can include it in the next iteration of the Wealthy Parent Pod. Next question from Rebecca. I have $25,000 left on my student loans at 6%, and I'm investing $500 a month. Should I stop investing and attack the debt or keep doing both? Okay, great question, Rebecca. And as I was mentioning in the previous question here, the line for me is that 7-8%. So technically your student loans are at 6. So I would say, one, simply just continue to invest the money. Now, what I like to walk people through in my Wealthy Parent program is I have a debt payment calculator, and maybe I can pull this up for you guys quickly. Here we go. And this is just an example that I have in here. I was walking through someone else with something. But basically what you can do, if I just remove all of these items in here, you would just have the student loans. So you said that you had $25,000 of student loans at 6%. And my file is telling me that the monthly payments would be we'll just call it $125. Okay, and let's just assume that we're making minimum payments of the $125 here. And you'll see that, so my calculator only goes up to, basically it's 30 years. 30 years. And it's saying you're not going to pay it off in the 30 years. So I don't know how much you're paying towards the student loan, but this could be something to look at. It's like, well, do I want to have student loans for 30 years? I don't know. So you have to ask yourself that. But at the end of the day, everything is a choice. So since that 6% is right around that cutoff, we could look towards putting more money to it. Like, let's say, for example, extreme example, let's just say you stopped paying the $500 towards investing and you put all of it towards your student loans. And we did $625 a month. We added that $500. Now it's going to take 45 months to pay off. So basically a little over 3 years, almost 4 years. This is if you completely stop investing. Now, the other question is, how do you know, is that the only extra cash flow that you have, $500 a month, and you're just putting it towards investing? I guess I'd be really curious about that, is like, how much extra cash flow could there possibly be? Like, is this something that you've been aware of and you're looking into trying to free up more cash flow? So the 3-month look back, and then the North Star goals, and then realignment, figuring out where your money's been going, where you want it to go, and then shifting things around to more of a value-based budgeting strategy. So that could be an interesting thought there. But for you, then you have to ask yourself, okay, let's assume that it's just $500 a month that you have access to, the cash flow. Then you have to ask, okay, in basically almost 4 years, and I stop investing, what's the impact of that? So you could play around with the numbers here. If you go to compounding interest calculator, right? And let's say you're contributing the $500 a month over, say 30 years, you start at 0. Let's just assume you start at 0, even though I know it sounds like you had money in there. It's going to be $745,000. And if you waited 4 years, so let's say 26, it's going to be $521,000. So how much is that of a difference? $220,000. $220,000 by waiting 4 years of pausing all investments. So it's just a matter of understanding your risk tolerance, the opportunity of doing it. Now, maybe there's a hybrid strategy here instead of being that intense with it, where instead of the minimum payment, you're doing $325, for example, you're putting $200 here, and then that's going to take, 8 years to pay off. But you have an extra, now you're putting $300 a month towards the investing. So we could look at that here. And in 30 years, that's $447. So even that's lower than, so you have to look at the opportunity costs, right? At the end of the day, technically this conservative rate of 8% that I'm using is higher than the 6%. But at the end of the day, also the 6% debt payoff is going to be a guaranteed return, where this is just sort of an estimate conservative number of 8%. So what I would do is it's a kind of a personal question. You have to evaluate what makes sense for you, what timeline are you trying to make all this stuff happen in? Because having debt is more than just about the numbers. It's about the mental side as well. Are you okay having a student loan for, in the examples we gave, 8 years, 6 years, over 30 years, right? So you have to just ask yourself, that as well. Without knowing more of your situation, it's hard to know, but this is kind of the framework and the thoughts that I would be using at least to consider an option for going forward. So I don't like the idea of stopping investing altogether, especially because you only have the one student loan at 6%. So I wouldn't stop investing altogether, but I would consider how do I pay off the student loan faster without it impacting my investing? So that's where the additional cash flow comes in. How do I keep doing the $500 investing? And then how do I free up extra cash or, increase my income so I can put it towards the student loan? And if you think these answers or questions were helpful for you in any sort of way, make sure to check out the link below this video to book a call directly with me to have a chat about the Wealthy Parent Program. The conversation is just going to be a friendly one to see where you're at, kind of where you want to go, and then maybe we'll unlock the one thing keeping you stuck from getting there. It's a direct call with me specifically, and I'd love to meet you. Hopefully we'll talk on the other side. And if not, maybe you could just check out this episode here of the Wealthy Parent Pod with more questions from more parents. I'll see you there.